times have you been married, then?
I think 3.
3.
3 that I'm cognizant of.
Welcome to MsMojo, and today we're counting down our picks for the top 20 celebs who married too young.
After that, it kind of started the breakup of everything and everybody.
For this list, we'll be looking at celebrities who arguably married too young, if only evidenced by their subsequent divorces. As such, we won't be considering country singer Loretta Lynn, for instance, since though she got hitched at just 15, her union lasted nearly 50 years upon her spouse's passing. Hey, when it works, it works. Let us know what you think of this list. Say "I do" to leaving a comment below. Number 20, Uma Thurman. While the exact details of how they met are unclear, what we do know for sure is that when Uma Thurman met Gary Oldman, she was 18 and he was 30. They got married in October of 1990, about 6 months after her 20th birthday. For Oldman, it was his second marriage. For Thurman, it was her first walk down the aisle and her first time in love. While we don't want to say the love didn't last, we will say that the marriage sure didn't, as they parted ways less than 2 years later. We aren't the only ones who think Uma married too young. The actress herself has called her marriage to Oldman a mistake. Number 19, Ava Gardner. Screen legend Ava Gardner's longest marriage was to Frank Sinatra, who, in her autobiography, she called the love of her life. However, when the two tied the knot back in 1951, Gardner had already married twice before and was the ripe old age of 28. For her first marriage, we have to go back almost a decade to January of 1942, when a 19-year-old Gardner said "I do" to actor Mickey Rooney. As for the "I don't," we only have to skip to 1943 when Gardner divorced him, claiming, among other things, mental cruelty. Number 18, Olivia Wilde. Olivia Wilde's second long-term partnership was with Jason Sudeikis, who, in Ted Lasso, plays a football coach who becomes a soccer coach in England, the land of the most famous royal family.
No, I have never coached the sport that you folks call football.
At any level.
Jesus. And heck, you could fill 2 internets with what I don't know about football.
Whereas her first marriage, at the age of 19, was to Italian filmmaker Tal Ruspoli, a member of the aristocratic Ruspoli family. Yes, that was a long way to go for a royal reference, but we think it was worth it. Which is also how Wilde feels about her marriage to Ruspoli, which lasted 8 years. She's attributed to being the person she is now because of that marriage and the growth that came from it. Number 17, Kim Kardashian. Regardless of what you thought about Kim Kardashian's marriage to Kanye West, or her 72-day marriage to Chris Humphries, she was in her 30s at the time.
In accord with the laws of the state of California, I pronounce you husband and wife. Chris, you may kiss your bride.
No, the marriage we're talking about here is when a 19-year-old Kim K married music producer Damon Thomas. The couple was married in 2000, and 3 years later, it was Thomas who filed for divorce. Kardashian would later claim that Thomas was both physical and emotionally abusive, and that she was high on ecstasy during their wedding ceremony. Yeah, not exactly the best way to start and end a marriage. Number 16, LeAnn Rimes.
What is so wrong with my boots?
Nothing. If you're, going to an apple press in Vermont.
Rimes and actor Eddie Cibrian got together around 2009 and were married a couple of years later. But what you may not know was that the happy couple were actually both married to other people when they first started hooking up. And it was that affair that led to the end of both marriages. For Rhimes, it was a 7-year marriage to Dean Chemay that began in 2002, when she was just 19 years old. Rhimes met Chemay when he was a dancer for the 2001 Academy of Country Music Awards show that she was hosting, and Rhimes knew after their first date that she was going to marry him. Number 15, Drew Barrymore. She started acting young, so is it any surprise she married young too? Drew Barrymore first got engaged in 1991 at only 16 years old to the grandson of a Hollywood producer. When that fell through, she waited a whole year before getting engaged again to actor and singer Jamie Walters. After that engagement was called off, Drew finally took the plunge and married bar owner Jeremy Thomas in 1994 at the age of 19. Unfortunately, the couple didn't click, and Barrymore filed for divorce after less than 2 months of marriage. Number 14, Whoopi Goldberg.
The only way I could be married to anyone ever again is if they lived in another country.
Whoopi Goldberg once said that some people are not meant to be married, and I am not meant to. And it would appear that Goldberg came to this realization honestly. There's an expression that says, don't knock it till you've tried it. And when it comes to marriage, Whoopi tried 3 times.
Well, for someone who says you're not cut out for it, you tried it a few times.
Including in 1973, when an 18-year-old Goldberg married her former drug counselor, Alvin Martin. She also gave birth to her daughter that same year. The couple divorced 6 years later, although it did end up being the longest of Goldberg's 3 marriages. Number 13, Sofia Vergara. Everyone loves a story of high school sweethearts who get married and stay together into old age. Well, that wasn't Sofia Vergara's story.
What the hell is this?
I told you, Jay. I called your secretary and told her to order you a box of baby cheeses. Oh, so now that is my fault too.
Vergara, the woman who years later would make baby cheeses funny, was only 18 years old when she married her high school sweetheart. His name was Joe Gonzalez, and the year was 1991. They divorced in 1993. While the marriage was short-lived, the couple did produce a son, Manolo. They also remained friendly post-divorce, and as Sofia told Parade magazine in 2011, when Jose comes to the United States, he stays with me. Number 12, Melanie Griffith. Talk about an up and down relationship. Academy Award nominee Melanie Griffith started dating Don Johnson when she was just 14 years old. Johnson of Miami Vice fame first encountered Griffith while working on the film The Harrod Experiment, on which Griffith was also working as an extra. 4 years later, the 2 actors eloped, with the marriage lasting a grand total of 6 months. However, after 13 years apart, the 2 reconnected and married for a second time in 1989. They would welcome their daughter Dakota Johnson, who you'll recognise as Anastasia Steele from the 50 Shades of Grey series, just a few months later. The 2 separated for good in 1996. Number 11, Janet Jackson. Janet Jackson is one of the best-selling artists in music history, and in 1984, when she was just 18, she married James DeBarge, an R&B singer and member of the group DeBarge, which, as you may have guessed, consisted of members of his family. To quickly recap, the daughter of one of music's most famous families married the son of one of music's other famous families. Yes, that really happened. The marriage would ultimately be annulled, proving that the union was far from a match made in heaven. Number 10, Cher. Throughout her illustrious career, Cher has literally done it all, from gracing the top of the pop charts numerous times and winning an Academy Award to selling more than 100 million records and marrying her first husband when she was just 18. Wait, what? That's right, Cher married 29-year-old singer Sonny Bono in an unofficial ceremony in Mexico in 1964. The two later formed the folk rock group Sonny and Cher, achieving mainstream success with their song I Got You Babe in 1965. The two married officially in '69, welcoming a baby to their family the same year. Unfortunately, it didn't take long for their already tumultuous relationship to deteriorate, and in 1975 they divorced. Number 9. Elizabeth Taylor. If ever there was an actress more famous for her marriages than her acting, it would have to be Elizabeth Taylor. A two-time Academy Award winner and one of the defining actresses of her generation, Taylor was married a whopping 8 times to 7 different men. For the sake of brevity, we'll only be focusing on her first marriage to hotel heir Conrad Hilton Jr. in 1950. At the time, Hilton Jr. was 6 years older than Taylor, who'd only turned 18 3 months earlier. The wedding was ultimately a sham, with MGM footing the bill in the hopes that it would promote Taylor's next film. Taylor would divorce Hilton just 9 months later. Number 8. Macaulay Culkin. One of the most famous child stars in film history, Culkin rose to fame playing Kevin McAllister in the 1990 comedy Home Alone and its sequel Home Alone 2: Lost in New York. For years, Culkin was America's golden child, which made it all the more shocking when he decided to marry fellow child actor Rachel Miner in 1998, when they were both just 18. As is often the case for actors who marry too young, Culkin and Miner separated in 2000 and were divorced by 2002. Number 7. Taron Noah Smith. Taron Noah Smith was 7 years old when he started playing Mark Taylor, the youngest of 3 sons, on the 90s hit show Home Improvement.
It's just you and me, Mark, unless you got something else to do.
Nope, I want to be with you.
And while the role brought him fame and decent fortune, he quit acting when the show ended. He was 16 at the time, and while he wouldn't make any future headlines for his acting roles, his role as a husband sure made people stand up and take notice. Probably because Smith was 17 years old when he married Heidi Van Pelt, who was 16 years older. It might surprise some to know that the marriage actually lasted more than a year or two, but in the end, these two called it quits after 6. Number 6. Shirley Temple. In 1950, child star Shirley Temple married Charles Alden Black, and the couple remained married for nearly 55 years, until Black's death in 2005. However, prior to those long-lasting nuptials, Temple had been married to Army Air Corps Sergeant John Agar from 1945 to 1949. Temple had first met Agar, who was 7 years her senior, while she was just 15. But it wasn't until she turned 17 that the two got married. While the marriage didn't last, the couple did give birth to a daughter, of whom Temple was awarded custody after the marriage ended. Number 5. Solange Knowles. Solange Knowles, who spent many years in her big sister Beyoncé's shadow, has since emerged as a talented singer in her own right. Her 2016 album, A Seat at the Table, made it all the way to the top of the Billboard 200 album charts. Knowles is also known for having married Daniel Smith in 2004 when she was only 17 years old. The high school sweethearts later welcomed their only child, Daniel Jules J. Smith Jr., that same year. Sadly, the marriage didn't last long, with the couple opting for a divorce in 2007. Number 4. Demi Moore. Did you know that actress Demi Moore was actually born Demi Jean Gwines? Considering that didn't exactly roll off the tongue, and that she had recently married singer Freddie Moore, Demi decided to use his last name as her stage name. However, we aren't here to talk about Demi Moore's name, we're here to discuss her teenage marriage to a man 12 years her senior. The two met when Demi was just 16 and married a year later in 1980. The two would later divorce in 1985, adding Demi Moore's name to the ever-growing list of teenage brides whose marriages didn't last. Number 3, Mila Jovovich. The beautiful and talented Jovovich married her Resident Evil director, Paul W.S. Anderson, in 2009, 10 years after her divorce from Luc Besson, her Fifth Element director, whom she wed in 1997. And while her love for directors is interesting, it was her love for actor Shawn Andrews that puts her on this list. As some of you may remember, Andrews and Jovovich played a couple in Richard Linklater's 1993 film Dazed and Confused, and the two took their relationship from in front of the camera to in front of a wedding officiant during the making of the film. At the time, Jovovich was 16 and Andrews was 20, and this didn't sit well with Jovovich's mother, who ended up annulling the marriage just 2 months later. Number 2, Marilyn Monroe. Marilyn Monroe's famous marriage to baseball legend Joe DiMaggio and playwright Arthur Miller have been well documented. But did you know she was married to another man when she was just 16? Monroe married James Dougherty in 1942, shortly after her 16th birthday. The marriage was one of necessity, as Monroe's foster family was moving to West Virginia and by law weren't allowed to take her with them. She was thus facing the prospect of being sent to an orphanage. To avoid that gloomy fate, Monroe married Dougherty, who was 21. The two had very little in common, and in 1946 they divorced, with Monroe on the verge of becoming a star.
Before we continue, be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. You have the option to be notified for occasional videos or all of them. If you're on your phone, make sure you go into your settings and switch on notifications.
Number 1, Aaliyah. For those who'd forgotten about the controversial relationship between Aaliyah and R. Kelly back in the 90s, the 2019 documentary Surviving R. Kelly brought it back into the public consciousness.
R&B superstar R. Kelly on trial.
While there was conflicting reports at the time, and neither Aaliyah nor Kelly would talk about it, there has been evidence in the intervening years to show that the two were married back in 1994. Although Aaliyah's age on the certificate is listed as 18, she was only 15 at the time she married the 27-year-old Kelly without her parents' knowledge. We also know that her parents annulled the marriage just 6 months later. In 1997, Aaliyah filed suit to have the marriage records expunged, as she'd cut all ties with Kelly.
Sometimes it's hard to tell you so. Do you agree with our picks? Check out this other recent clip from MsMojo. And be sure to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified about our latest videos.